Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here in Snowflake. I got a couple questions for you. Is anybody here excited to be a Republican in Snowflake in 2022? This is a great time to be a Republican. This is going to be a year for us to take back our country and to save our country. I've got another question. Is anybody excited to beat Mark Kelly in November? Absolutely, and that's why I'm running, because we've got to beat Mark Kelly. But more importantly than beating Mark Kelly is we've got to make sure that we replace Mark Kelly with a proven conservative who can champion our conservative values on Capitol Hill. And that's why I'm running. I want to take just a few minutes and introduce myself to you, tell you a little bit about me, tell you a little bit about my record, what I've done for you in public office. But more importantly, I want to tell you what I hope to be able to accomplish for you as your next United States Senator. So as I mentioned, my name's Justin Olson. I'm a native of Arizona. I'm a family man. I've got 9 children. That's 5 boys and 4 girls. And one of my daughters is here with me today. Brooke, if you could please stand up, smile, and wave to everybody. We are the proud parents of our beautiful children. And I always love to see the surprised look in people's eyes when they find out I'm the father of 9. But here in Snowflake, I think you probably think that's just a good start, right? I'm a native of Arizona. My family history goes back 6 generations. My first ancestor came to Arizona in 1850. He actually settled many different parts of Arizona. He served in the 3rd Territorial Legislature. At the time, he was settling an area that's now flooded by Lake Mead. He floated in a handmade canoe down the Colorado River to Yuma. He caught a stagecoach to Tucson. He was late getting to the legislature because the stagecoach driver was shot on the way. And I was reading this family history and I was blown away by, first of all, how much it sounded like a John Wayne movie, but secondly, at the sacrifices that were made by those who came before, from the Pilgrims to the pioneers. They came to our country, they settled the West for one reason, for their freedom. They wanted to be left alone to pursue their own happiness. They wanted to be able to worship their God the way that they saw fit. They wanted individual rights and individual responsibility. You know what? And those freedoms that we all cherish, those are in jeopardy. We could lose what we love about our country. I'm reminded of what Ronald Reagan said years ago, and he taught us that freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. You know, we're living that prophecy by Ronald Reagan right now. He saw our day. If he didn't see it, he certainly predicted it. We can lose our country. Our country is on the brink. And we've got to stand up and fight. We've got to protect the principles established in our Constitution that made our country great. And that's why I'm running for the United States Senate. So we can pass on a strong and a free country to our kids and our grandkids with the light of liberty still burning brightly. So I want to take just a few minutes and tell you a little bit about my record. But before I do that, I also want to mention that my wife is also a proud native of Arizona. Her family history actually stems from here in Snowflake. Her 2nd or 3rd great grandfather came to Snowflake in 1875. Does anybody know Andrew Losey Rogers? So he came to the Rogers cabin. Her grandma is Beatrice Rogers, and the cabin that's settled there or restored just across from City Hall. This is my wife's family history. She was raised in Mesa as well, but she has many family that is still here in Snowflake. So we love coming up to this part of the country. She's been trying to convince me to buy a place here and move the family out of the valley for quite some time, and maybe she'll win that decision in the near future. So that's just a little bit about our family. But I want to tell you a little bit about my record, and the reason I want to tell you that is, well, first of all, I've got another question for you. We talked about being excited about a Republican year in 2022. We talked about beating Mark Kelly, but I've got another question. Is anyone out there, have any of you ever been let down by a politician before? Yeah, so many times, right? So many times, and it's so frustrating. And why is that? I think that's because, on the campaign trail, politicians, they'll tell us what we want to hear, right? And talk is cheap, right? Then they get elected, and what happens? Well, they become part of the problem. They become Republicans in name only. They let us down. They become part of the establishment. They go along to get along, to try and be part of the crowd, to try and to climb the ranks within Washington, D.C. or the state legislature. Right? Well, the reason I ask you that question is because it is so important that we look to something more than a candidate's words. Because talk is cheap, but what speaks louder than our words are our actions. And that's why I want to share with you what sets me apart from the rest of this field in this crowded primary where we're seeking to win your support to take on Mark Kelly. I'm the only candidate in this race with a proven conservative record. I don't just make promises, I've kept them. You don't have to take my word for it that I'm going to be your conservative champion on Capitol Hill. You can look and see what I've done. So I want to take just a few minutes and share with you that record. So I was first elected to the state legislature in 2010. You guys remember the environment, right? Obama was in the White House. We had too big to fail. We had unsustainable spending, corporate bailouts. We were so frustrated. It was the year of the Tea Party. It felt a lot like the energy that we have right now, right? When folks are getting together, we're organized, and we're trying to save our country. And I was frustrated. And at the state level, we had an unprecedented budget crisis. And what did the legislature do? Well, they passed a record property tax increase, a record sales tax increase. They sold the state capitol, debt financed it back for years into the future, just to pay the salaries and benefits of that fiscal year. I was so upset. I thought, you know what, Arizonans, we had been hit hard by the Great Recession. We had record levels of unemployment, and now the government's asking us to pay more of our hard-earned resources for our government. I mean, this is wrong. They should be living within their means. They should be balancing their budget. We should expect more of our elected officials. And so I ran for the legislature. And I ran on a platform of making balancing the budget my #1 priority and doing it with no new debt, no new taxes, and no budget gimmicks. And I was elected. I was very honored to get down to the legislature. I worked hand in hand with my fellow great patriot, Andy Biggs, who was the budget leader in the Senate at the time. I became the budget leader in the House of Representatives, and in the first year as the appropriations chairman, we passed my budget bills that were the first structurally balanced budget that the state had seen in years. And we did it, thank you. And we did it without raising your taxes. We did it with no new debt and no new budget gimmicks. But not only did I stand for fiscal responsibility, I also thought, you know what, we've got to get Arizonans back to work. And how can we do that? Well, let's get the government out of the way of the private sector. So I introduced legislation to cut your income taxes, and it was successful. We cut your taxes, and we got Arizonans back to work. Forbes magazine actually recognized Arizona as the #1 state for projected job growth in that year. We got Arizonans back to work after the Great Recession by doing the same thing that President Trump did, getting the government out of the way, cutting taxes, cutting regulations. In addition, I was a strong champion for the right to life. I learned that Planned Parenthood actually received 40% of its budget from our tax dollars. Oh. And it was sickening to me, just like it is to so many of us. So I introduced a bill to defund Planned Parenthood in Arizona, and I got it passed. Governor Brewer signed it into law. I got an A rating from the National Rifle Association. I had another successful bill to defund Obamacare in Arizona. I funded the Border Strike Force to get resources to our law enforcement to protect us from this illegal immigration that was spiking under the Obama administration just like it is now. And the list goes on. I introduced expansions to school choice to empower parents to choose what is the best educational environment for their children. I was then elected to statewide office. In 2018, I was elected in a year that was a challenging year for Republicans. 4 out of our 9 statewide candidates fell short. I was outspent by more than 30-1. Tom Steyer, that out-of-state California billionaire, didn't like the fact that I was working to defeat the green bad deal here in Arizona. So he spent $4 million trying to defeat me. But I was still successful, and I believe that was because Arizonans saw in me someone who had served Arizona with the highest standards of ethics and integrity. Someone who earnestly is seeking Arizona's best interest. And so I was elected, and on the commission I've continued that conservative record. I defeated the green bad deal here in Arizona. I fought for and protected ratepayers' hard-earned resources. I stood up and spoke out for competition. I thought, look, we should empower customers to be able to choose who's going to provide their power, so you're not captive ratepayers. But most importantly, and the accomplishment I'm most proud of at the commission, when Biden introduced his unconstitutional vaccine mandate, I introduced a rule for our corporation, subject to our jurisdiction, and said, you will not comply with this unconstitutional vaccine mandate. We told them to pound sand, and not here in Arizona. We're going to stand for individual rights and individual responsibility. And that's just a little bit about my public service. But in addition to my public service, I've also been fighting the good fight to try and save our country in my private sector work. Is anyone here familiar with Turning Point USA? Yeah. Charlie Kirk's organization. I've served as the CFO for Turning Point USA. I've been in the trenches, fighting that good fight, trying to save our country, teaching the rising generation to love our country and to respect the principles of its founding. So that's just a little bit about me. And like I said, I just wanted to share that with you so that you can have confidence that in this race you have a candidate that you can be confident will be your conservative champion on Capitol Hill. But now I want to share with you what I hope to be able to accomplish for you as your next United States Senator. I've got a number of bills that I look forward to introducing as your United States Senator that are surrounding my priorities, which are securing the border, election integrity, and growing the economy, ending this runaway inflation, balancing our budget, getting back to fiscal responsibility. The bill I'm most excited about, it's not the first bill I'll introduce, but the one I'm very excited about is a bill that I'm going to introduce that will abolish the IRS. Does anybody else? The IRS is this behemoth. It wields far too much power. It's been weaponized by the left to go after conservatives, and we've got to get the federal government back to that limited role that our founding fathers anticipated. But my number one priority is border security. So in my first day in the United States Senate, I'm going to introduce a bill to secure our borders. And it's not complicated. We're going to follow the example that President Trump set. We're going to finish the wall. We're going to properly fund the Border Patrol. We're going to make permanent the Remain in Mexico policy. And most importantly, we're going to make a mandatory E-Verify requirement for every employer across the entire country.
All right.
If we do those reforms, we'll be able to regain operational control of the border. We'll be able to stop this chaos that's empowering the drug cartels and damaging our communities. So that's something I'm excited about introducing. In addition, my next priority is going to be election integrity. I'm going to fight tooth and nail to defeat H.R. 1, this federal takeover of our elections. And you guys know that our Arizona senator actually voted to blow up the filibuster in order to pass this Freedom to Cheat Act, to tell states that you cannot put in place a voter identification mandate. So I'm going to fight tooth and nail to defeat that, but then I'm going to introduce a bill that empowers states to require a voter identification mandate for every ballot that's cast. We've got to protect our elections. Next, I'm going to introduce a number of different bills with regard to fiscal responsibility to get us back to that limited role that our founding fathers anticipated. I'm going to introduce a bill that says, look, the members of Congress have not balanced the budget in decades. You've got one simple job to do, be proper stewards of our tax dollars. If you can't do that, my bill's going to say that in any legislative session where you fail to pass a balanced budget, the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives will not get paid. If you can't do a simple job, why should you get a salary funded by the taxpayers? It's absolutely wrong. Next, I look forward to introducing the Nancy Pelosi bill. We're going to introduce a bill that says members of Congress cannot buy and sell individual stocks. You've got to stop profiting from insider trading. And I look forward to introducing a call for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, an amendment for term limits for our members of the House and the Senate. I look forward to introducing a bill to protect the most innocent among us. I'm going to introduce the heartbeat bill. And how about that Supreme Court? Isn't that exciting? We're going to see an end of road, not in our lifetime, but in this year. And I'll just share one final bill that I look forward to introducing and then leave you with a quote before we get to questions. Now, the last bill that I'm going to share with you here today that kind of captures what I want to accomplish in the United States Senate. It's a bill to get us back to that limited role of the federal government that our founding fathers anticipated. It's a bill that's going to say we're going to eliminate every action of the federal government and every department of the federal government that's not authorized under the enumerated powers of the Constitution. We've got to get back to that limited role of the federal government, the principal enumerated powers like border security, like protecting the national security, and then shift everything else back to the states where it belongs. And so I'm going to just conclude with one final thought, and that is that our country is worth saving. America is something special. I'm reminded of what Daniel Webster said in the 1800s. He said, "Hold on, my friends, to the Constitution and to the republic for which it stands. For miracles do not cluster, and that which has happened once in 6,000 years might not happen again. So hold on to the Constitution, for should the United States Constitution fail, there will be tyranny throughout the land." Now, I love our Constitution. I love the principles established in our founding documents. And I'm not about to stand by and watch those freedoms erode. Some things are worth fighting for, like America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. And that's why I'm running for the United States Senate. We are one vote short of being able to block the damage that the radical left is inflicting on our country. And whenever our freedoms are in jeopardy, whenever our liberties are in peril, wherever that battle rages the loudest, or wherever the freedom is fighting the strongest, that's where I'm going to be, championing the constitutional principles that made our country great. My name is Justin Olson. I'm running for the United States Senate. I would be honored to have your support. Thank you so much for having me. Here and then over there.
Not only are we blessed to have ADEQ down our throats up here, but we get the EPA. And quite frankly, it's irritating that not only does a lot of the funding that comes to Arizona go to the great state of Maricopa, but they also broad brush regulations with us. For instance, Method 9, where they come measure the amount of dust from our gravel pits. Have you seen the wind out here?
You'd have to pave the desert in order to stop the
Right,
the
that's my point. And when I tell them, why are you harassing our gravel pits and our aggregate companies? Well, they have to follow this legislation that was written in the Valley or New York or somewhere else. And I'm sick of it. We don't live there. You need to write legislation that is fitting to where we live, but we always get forgotten.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's something that I'm going to champion as your United States Senator. You know, what we need to do is we need to push all of the decision-making down to the lowest level of government where it can be managed appropriately. And we have many tools in the toolbox to accomplish that. The 9th and the 10th Amendment, absolutely. We've also got the anti-commandeering doctrine that was established by Sheriff Mack. You guys remember this, right? He challenged the Brady Bill. He said, look, not in our county. We actually respect the Second Amendment. I'm not going to enforce this unconstitutional gun control. And what did the Bill Clinton administration say? They said, yeah, you are, and we're going to sue you, and we're going to take you up to the Supreme Court. And Sheriff Mack won. And the Supreme Court said, the federal government cannot commandeer our resources to do its bidding. But they do it all the time because we, unfortunately, our elected representatives cave. And they say, if you don't do this, then we're going to step in and do it. We need to push back. Yeah. And that's what I did in the state legislature with the defunding of Obamacare. We need to look at every opportunity to push back and push that decision-making to the lowest level of government. Thank you for that question. I think I saw her hand next, and then we'll go over here.
Okay, this is perhaps an inappropriate question, but one I need an answer to.
Those are my favorite kind.
Okay, great. I have not seen any commercials at all for you. How are you going to push back against Jim Lehman, Blake Masters, My Pick Mick, you know? How are you going, because sitting here today, I can say, you probably have my vote. But how is everybody else going to hear about it? How are you going to defeat those other candidates?
Thank you so much for that question. You know what? I do feel a little bit like David versus Goliath, you know, but it's not the first time that I've been in that situation before. I mentioned that I ran in 2018 and I was outspent by 30-1, but I was still successful, and it is a challenge. It takes a lot of work, but I'm up to the task. And so how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to get the message out. We've got a significant amount of ability to accomplish that, but it takes a little bit longer when you don't have the personal fortunes or Peter Thiel's money, $10 million from a Facebook board member that is funding these commercials. And so it does make it more difficult, but what's exciting is that we actually did an informed ballot test where we asked the voters. First, we told them a little bit about the backgrounds of each of the candidates and then asked, who would you support? Well, I came back by almost 3-1 as the favored candidate in that informed ballot test. So what that tells me is that this is a winnable race. We're going to get our message out, and when we get that message out, the response that I get from voters is the response that you just mentioned here tonight. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah.
All right, I'm looking at history. the Senate leadership tends to be senators that have a long history, which mainly are part of the swamp. Going down to the thing that you're saying, most candidates give you what you want to hear. All the stuff that I heard sounds great, but how do you get that past the Senate leadership?
Yeah, great
How
question.
do you keep it from going into that bottom drawer and never getting heard?
Well, first and foremost, it starts with electing better leadership. You know, I love the question when folks ask me, are you going to support Mitch McConnell? No, I'm going to support a conservative. I'm going to support someone like Mike Lee or Ted Cruz or Rand Paul, someone who actually stands for the Constitution. You know, that's where it starts. We've got to push our party towards the conservative principles that we stand for. But then in addition to that, we've got to use every leverage point available to us. And I think that those senators that I've mentioned have been great examples of being able to accomplish meaningful reforms and move the dial in two different ways. One, by setting these lofty goals. Like I've mentioned here today, some of these goals, these bills that I look forward to introducing. It's important that we do that. Ted Cruz has a bill to abolish the IRS, to replace our income tax system with a simple, low, flat tax that can be filed on the back of a postcard and replace the IRS as we know it. You know, that's the type of visionary thinking that we need in our leaders in the United States Senate. And then in addition to that, we look for every opportunity to move the dial. Like Mike Lee, he introduced an amendment to a budget bill to defund OSHA's ability to fund Biden's unconstitutional vaccine mandate. And that was incredibly important. It actually put Mark Kelly on record voting against Arizona workers, saying that if you don't receive this jab, you're going to lose your job. You know, so that's the type of legislator that I'm going to be. I'm not going to be a backbencher. I'm going to be a leader advancing these conservative ideas in the conservative movement in the United States Senate.
Are you and your family prepared for the attacks?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. If you didn't hear in the back, my family and I, are we prepared for these attacks? You know, this is a decision that we made as a family. You know, I actually joke around sometimes with folks, but it's a little bit true that, you know, I didn't get my wife into this, she got me into it. So she's been pushing me to run for this race for quite some time not because she wants to do it. She would much rather, I mentioned, she wants to live in a small town and live this lifestyle, not be part of this political effort that is so challenging. But she knows that this is the fight that we're called to wage, that we've got to defend our constitutional freedoms. If we don't do it, then we're going to lose our country. It's already on the brink. I mean, the radical left, they used to hide the fact that they wanted to take our country down the path towards socialism, towards communism, towards totalitarianism. Now they're transparent about it. That's where they want to take our country. And we know what happens. We can look to history every time it's been tried. Every time big government has been tried, it has failed and has left a wake of destruction and poverty in its path. And that will be our future if we don't stand up and fight. So are we up to the challenge? Absolutely. The first time I ran for office, I got a voice message that said, this person disguising his voice says, I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this for real? You know, I mean, Don was talking about, you know, that's unfortunately part of the territory that we have to deal with. But there are some things that are more important, like saving our country. And so yes, we are up to it. Thank you for that question. I'll go here and then over there. Oh, Walt. Okay, so we'll go here and then to Walt.
Okay. Mark Kelly has got the reservation vote. I've worked out on the res. It's a different client. You know, people have their own ideas and their families are together like ours are around here. And how are you going to get that segue in to that large population with the candy that he's offering them and, you know, the negotiations that are below the normal level? And it's a tough demand, but it needs to be approached, and we need to have the reservations come through and start realizing there's other opportunities.
Absolutely. You know, thank you for that question. You know, I think it's absolutely critical that we do look forward to that general election because, like I said, I look forward to a red wave this year, but it's so important that we win, that we cannot take anything for granted. And that's why I think it's critical that we put our best foot forward to be able to beat Mark Kelly. And I believe that I'm the candidate that can do that because...
Go up to the reservations and start
Absolutely. I'll go out to every community. There are a lot of conservatives, even on the reservation, even though they vote Democrat. They've been voting Democrat for generations. And so part of it is showing up, but part of it is also being a candidate that can connect with the voters. And I believe that I've demonstrated that. In 2018, up against odds, I was able to defeat the opposition, even when they had more than 30 times the amount of resources that I had, because of my ability to connect with voters, because I'm an honest person who's really trying to do what's right for Arizona. Last question. Okay, last question. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming, Justin. This isn't more of a question, just a comment. I've worked with Justin for over the past 4 years while he's been in the Corporation Commission, and I mean, before I got into office, and every dealings that I've had with him in my legislative office, everything he has said here today, he has actually done. So for that commercial you were looking for, this isn't a commercial or ad for him. However, a testimonial based on my experiences working with Justin. He's actually done those things that he said he did, and I'm sure he'll do those things down the future. So that it's not a yes or no for him. I just want to make sure that because he doesn't have that advertising, that you hear that from somebody who works in the legislative body. So
Thank you so much, Paul. That makes it right. Thank you so much for having me.